So an interesting thing happened this morning as we came to shoot this video. The Finance Bill 2023 at national level is out. And like I had forewarned my followers, is that in the first President Ruto's budget, there's a huge increase of 300 billion in the expenditure. He also targets to collect an extra 1 trillion shillings in the coming financial year. We usually do about 1.8 trillion, 1.9 trillion. So an extra 1 trillion means we'll be collecting 2.9 trillion. What does this mean? This collection from taxes will hit either VAT, income tax, or custom and excise. So we are going to unpack the Finance Bill 2023 later on, once we go through it. But that is related to what we are talking about today, which is the Nyeri Finance Act 2022. Now, a couple of days ago, something happened in Nyeri. Residents woke up one day and found out that hospital charges, some had doubled, parking fees had doubled, mortuary fees for dressing, 2,000 shillings, and so forth. And so there was an outcry as to how we got here. And so today we want to unpack exactly how we got here. So what is a finance bill? So the finance bill is one of those documents that no one really thinks about because it's not one of those key budget documents when we are planning, formulating the budget. But when we are spending money, we need to ask ourselves, where do we get the revenue? So part of the 85% of our revenue comes from national government, but then around 10% comes from our local revenue, which is captured in the Finance Act. Now, the finance, for any charge you pay in your county, be it parking fees, be it hospital charges, licenses, anything, it is always captured in the Finance Act. However, there is another document called the County Revenue Administration Act 2014 for Nyeri. This means when devolution kicked in, all charges were captured in that revenue administration document. Now, the finance bill, what it does, or the act itself, what it does is that it amends those charges. So every year we have new charges either coming in, being completely deleted, or increased or decreased. So we don't really go through all the other charges that don't need any change. So the Finance Act, or anytime you get the Finance Act or the Finance Bill, then you find out that these are the changes that are being done towards the County Revenue Administration Act. So how did we get here? Now, for Nyeri's case, we were supposed to have public participation in the Nyeri Finance Bill 2022, which was last year. So the county executive, which was the department developing this draft, did not carry out public participation. And so they came up with these charges, increases, and all these amendments, and then drafted the document, took it to cabinet for approval, and then it was submitted to the county assembly. Now, the county assembly carried out public participation around November 2022. And so what they did was two things. One, call for public participation at Wambogo Farm. And number two, they then uploaded the document online. So at this point, myself and other practitioners within Nyeri, we tried to unpack and educate the public on what the changes meant. So as we sat there and we tried to analyze the document, we really struggled. And I want to read something for you. So if you get the Finance Bill, page 21, and you read something like this, in section 1(5), by amending the fees charged in item A within the county from 80 to 150, town urban specific from 50 to 100, and in rural specific 40 to 50. We couldn't understand what this was amending. But because we knew the finance bill was amending the County Revenue Administration Act 2014, we got that document. It's online. Again, we tried to unpack or understand what this finance bill was amending. We couldn't understand. So what I did was make calls to the county assembly, the clerk of the finance committee, to ask, why can't we understand what is being amended? They told me, oh, Nelson, you need another document Now, remember, we've been amending this Revenue Administration Act every year since 2014. So I needed a document that has consolidated all these changes over all those years. This document was not online. So I was sent the document on WhatsApp. So I had the document. So it's safe to say in Nyeri, I was the only one then with this document. It's more like the marking scheme for you to understand what was being amended. And so this happened around 2 days before public participation. We couldn't really unpack. Public participation was on a Monday. So that meant we got the document around Thursday evening. So we tried to unpack it on Friday, and then weekend came in, and on Monday we were expected to participate in that forum. So without that document, you cannot understand what changes are being made. The section I've read to you actually was on street parking fees being doubled. But as you read it, or as I read it, you could not understand that. So at this point, public participation was not carried out by the executive. Then assembly, assuming, so I put quotes, assuming that the county executive had carried out public participation, yet we live in the same county, so they knew that had not happened. They called for one public participation forum at Wambogo Farm. Is it accessible for all the people across the 30 wards? That's for you to answer. But then if you complain to your MCA, he'll either say if you didn't come physically, then the document was online, which you could have downloaded and written a memo. But like I've said, if you don't have the Consolidated Revenue Administration Act, which is not online, then you cannot even draft that memo. You cannot understand what you are reading. So that was the scenario then. Now, in that forum, we were several of us. We even had a team from HERAF, Health Rights Advocacy Forum, who really focused on health charges. All right, so the mortuary charges, the card charges, all that, they really argued against increasing charges at this time. Then the rest of us, we had Chamber of Commerce there, the CEO, Nyeri branch. He also advocated for the removal of semi-urban, which was again increasing charges for that category. It was introducing a new category and that. So in that forum, we really did our best to give our views. And the finance committee took them and went to the county assembly. They drafted a report and presented it to the county assembly. Now, at this point, the finance committee, when it presents this document, the assembly can do either two things. One, they can vote for the entire document as it is with the recommendations from the finance committee, or they can vote for each clause and again weigh in that recommendation. So I want to be very clear that our MCAs, your MCA that you elected, was well aware of the charges, each charge in that finance bill. At the end of the day, the law says that only county assembly can approve the Finance Act. It's no one else's responsibility. It's your MCA who approved those charges. So what happened now after they approved these amendments? It became law. It became the Nyeri County Finance Act 2022. So about a month ago, the county government started effecting and implementing that act. And that is where, when you went to pay your parking, you are used to paying 50 shillings. Now it's 100 shillings. That code is not going through until you put in 100 shillings. You go to where I come from, Karatina Sub-County Hospital. You find charges, your card has gone up from 100 bob to 200 bob. Now, I'm not against charges and increase of charges. But what I insist on is when you increase charges for me as a resident, as a taxpayer, then improve services also. You must be held accountable for the service delivery. So at this point, that is what happened, and Karatina residents took it a step further. They drafted a petition, submitted it to the clerk of the County Assembly of Nyeri. The County Assembly of Nyeri sent the finance committee all the way to Karatina to come and listen to the residents. Now, this was more of a circus. Why do I say it's a circus? The finance committee spent more time there behaving like this is the first time they are seeing these charges. They would say things like, oh, mortuary charges are 2,000. Where did this come from? I've not heard of this. We didn't approve this. And so forth and so forth. And the public, because the public is not aware of the process that I have just laid out to you, the public was not any wiser. So we were there in a circus of who actually approved these charges. So in the end, we are not, as of now, aware of what happened to that petition. But I'm thinking, so of course, the Finance Committee will have drafted a report, tabled it again to the entire House of the MCAs for either approval or amendments. But at this point, practically, I don't think this will be possible to amend these charges. Why? Because another finance bill is coming along July this year. And so the question is, will we see the executive again follow the same route where they don't involve the public? Will we see then the assembly again follow the same route where they call us for one physical forum at Wambogo Farm, upload a very technical legal document which we cannot understand, and then call us ignorant for the same? And if your county is not involving you in these decisions, then how are county decisions made?